Dear members of CA Sri Lanka Kuwait chapter, the members of other overseas chapters, all other CA Sri Lanka members, and other participants around the world, I warmly welcome all of you for this live webinar organized by CA Sri Lanka Kuwait chapter. I'm Dishani Mallayabadu, an executive committee member of CA Sri Lanka Kuwait chapter, and it's my pleasure to let you know that there are participants from more than 10 countries join at the moment, and I hope you will find the session very interesting and useful. Attendees, you are always welcome to refer your questions to the presenter through the Q&A section. Your questions will get answered during the Q&A session. If you are a CS Sri Lanka member, please type your name and the membership number in the chat section to claim CPD hours. This is our fifth live webinar in the series of webinars organized by the Executive Committee of the Kuwait chapter. As you are aware, today the webinar is on the role of professionals in enabling the ecosystem of small and medium-sized enterprise in Sri Lanka. COVID-19 has severely trashed the world with its deadly health impact as well as the terminal economic impact. Similar to every other country, Sri Lanka is also making a great effort to safeguard and empower the SMEs to revive strongly, as SMEs play a critical role in its economic structure. As professionals, what's our role in this? How can we contribute? This is what we are going to talk about today. I would like to extend a special welcome to our resource person today, Mr. Chaminda Kumarasiri. Chaminda is a senior chartered accountant and a governing council member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. He is also a senior management consultant and the chairman of HCP Consulting Private Limited in Sri Lanka. Chaminda possesses over 20 years of experience in corporate sector, holding senior leadership positions in leading blue chips and multinationals. Chaminda is a director of Telecommunication Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka and an independent non-executive director of STB Bank PLC. He is also a member of the International Panel on Accounting Education at the International Federation of Accountants. Chaminda is an advisor to the Sri Lanka Chamber of Small and Medium Industries and a coach to SMEs and family businesses. He's a corporate trainer and a leadership coach and has trained over 50,000 individuals. Looking at his profile, he would be the ideal resource person for this topic. So without taking any further time, I'll hand over the session to Mr. Chaminda for his presentation. Mr. Chaminda, over to you.
Good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on wherever you are in the world. First of all, let me thank CS Sri Lanka Kuwait chapter for inviting me for this timely session. And I'm glad that it is on a topic that is very close to my heart. I've been working on this segment for a reasonable number of years now. And before I start, I hope that every one of you and your families are safe in the current context. As we all know, the numbers are increasing all across, and I'm sure that we are taking sufficient measures to protect ourselves and our loved ones. And I hope that things will fall in line and be improved very soon, and let's hope for the best. And with that, let me share my presentation. The topic today is enabling the ecosystem of small and medium-sized enterprises in Sri Lanka, role of professionals. So this is not a new topic. We've been discussing about this for a while, especially after the pandemic. All across the globe, we're talking about this. And I don't intend talking about the general things that we all know about, especially the pandemic matters, the numbers, health indicators. I think that is known to everyone. We all have chartered accountants here mostly. I think they are good in numbers. Let me not throw those negative numbers. I think, as I've told even in the morning in a discussion, in today's context, probably the most negative word is positive, because we don't want to hear anyone is saying positive in the current context. Nevertheless, let me start the presentation with a little bit of numbers in the global context. As you can see, this is something that I have extracted from a report published by PwC. It clearly indicates where the numbers are moving in terms of global context. All the predicted numbers during the previous year have been showing a reducing trend. And in fact, if you can see the yellow line, that is for Sri Lanka, the authorities have predicted a higher growth, because soon after the Easter attack, we've seen some positive sentiments in the market, mostly after the presidential election, because most of the people and economists and the business community foresaw the post-election period as a stable period because of the strong government that was established. Until we heard about this corona pandemic hitting the entire world, every plan has got toppled. And as you can see, all the lines are going down. And in the Sri Lankan context, our original predictions were 4.5. Now they are adjusting it to 2.2. Again, it's on a little optimistic ground, expecting the things to fall in line very soon. Let's hope that to be the reality as well. However, we have to look at these numbers with many unknown factors, many unpredictable factors. As we all know, it is not easy to predict this situation in current context. We never expected the second wave to hit us, and at this magnitude, the way things are going on. Now, the rate of inflation, rate of infection with regard to the pandemic, the immunity that is being built, and we are still talking about these things when the world is yet to find a solution or a vaccine for it. And we still don't know what would be the policy responses from the authorities, because these responses are not consistent. Time to time, the policymakers take decisions, change the policy direction, because now we have an uncontrollable condition. So depending on which way the pandemic moves and the rest of the world moves, the policymakers have to take decisions. And we also cannot predict the demand supply dynamics as well. As you must have seen in the Sri Lankan context, the export numbers grew drastically during the last couple of months. And in fact, it hit historic levels. At the same time, the imports were coming down. However, now the things are not that clear with the current context. We still don't know how the firms are going to respond, because we originally had a little space for us to play with the variables, and we could predict to a certain extent. Now things are a little uncertain again. So this is something that I have extracted from ADB. What they say is, up to now, their estimation is this pandemic has costed the entire world about $4.1 trillion, which is a massive figure, which I think it's still not validated. They're still counting it as things are escalating. Then this one I explained earlier, the Sri Lankan context, how central bank has predicted 4.5 to 5%. Now it has come down to 2.2, which is also on a little positive note. Right. This is a slightly different slide. How different sectors have got impacted in the global context. I don't intend spending a lot of time on these things because our main focus is on SME ecosystem today. We'll get there soon. Now, as you can see, this is a global survey. Based on that, they have identified the accommodation and food sectors have got the worst hit. And as you can see, the information technology segment is the least hit industry because that is anyway on IT platforms. We're talking about physical damages, physical blockages won't affect that too much. In fact, some of the IT related industries grew exponentially during the pandemic period due to this increased demand for things like work from home, etc. I just thought of giving you these two slides to put things into a different perspective. While we are talking about declining industries in many fronts, now you see, this is as per the World Health Organization, this is the monthly requirement for the health authorities to combat the pandemic. 89 million masks, 1.6 million goggles, 76 million gloves, and 2.9 million liters of hand sanitizer. This is just the monthly requirement. Now you can see an opening up of another massive industry here. Until the pandemic is over, at least there's going to be a big market for this. And interestingly, this slide also, just to put your things in a perspective, there are a lot of debate about the pandemic, the origin of the pandemic, whether it's a man-made, purposeful attack, or is it something that was natural. People are still debate about it, but these sometimes on the economic front, these perspectives gives us something more to think about these things. As you can see, in the current context, all COVID-related products are supplied majority from Germany, 15%, and disinfectant-related products, gloves, masks, etc., 26% market share is for China. You can see we got the pandemic from China, and we get most of the solutions also from China, it seems. It has been a blessing for them in the current context. Right. Now, let me get into the topic that we were planning to discuss: small and medium-sized enterprises. Before I talk about this in the Sri Lankan context, let me give you a little bit of perspective in the global context. In the global context, 99% of all firms represent SMEs. However, the definition of SMEs can change. It can vary from country to country. And even within the country for different purposes, it can vary, but this is an overall sense. This is what the statistics say. And it also says over 70% there was a disturbance. Sorry about it. Right. I was talking about how the SME sector is playing a role in the global context. And now we have a question for you. The first question you can answer. After that, I will talk about it. What is the contribution of SMEs to Sri Lankan economy in relation to GDP? Right, we've got more responses saying between 50 to 60, and we also have 12% saying less than 25, 28%, 25 to 50, 28, 25 to 50, and some also says more than 60%. Right. So the correct answer in this case is answer C, that is between 50 to 60%. In terms of contribution to the GDP, in the Sri Lankan context, it's around 52%. And it also contributes around 45% of the employment in the country. And most of these SME, we look at, in a broader sense, micro, small, and medium enterprises. Most of them are sole proprietorships. And in numbers, it's little over 1 million enterprises. And in that, we have statistics to say around 3 million people are engaged in SME related industry as drivers. They drive this industry. Right. We have another polling question. We will go to that as well. This is your own perception. I'm not going to give you any hint there. I just want to understand what is your perception in the current context. Quite interesting. Your confidence level above 50 altogether is around 61%. That's a good number. Altogether, if I look at, right? There are about one saying 50 to 75, 20% saying 80%. So that's good news that most of you all are taking the current context as a positive context for SMEs to move. Yes, let me also support your assessment. There were few barriers for SMEs to grow in the past, among other things. One of the biggest barriers that SMEs had in growing their businesses was they were not in a position to compete with this imported product, especially Chinese product. They were not able to match the quality and the price because China is making those production at a mass scale. Our people cannot match it. So one of the biggest reasons why SMEs couldn't grow was that import. Now the government has restricted imports, and it has helped most of the SMEs to now boost their industries. And there are a few other governmental supports, policy-wise, financially, and in many fronts. And there is also a lot of hype in the market to support local industries. There are various institutions, forums, and movements supporting these industries. As a result, now we can see a boost in this segment, and I vouch for what you all have said. It's a conducive market for now, for the time being. Right. Let me also ask you another question before I get into the details. Polling question number 3. Which one of the following do you think is most challenging for entrepreneurs when setting up a SME in Sri Lanka? Right. Business registration process, right business model, sourcing capital requirements, competition, lack of knowledge. Right, 49% says sourcing capital requirements. And the next item is lack of knowledge. Yes, I think you guys are very much in touch with the local context, it seems. Interesting. Okay, so this is what I have found. Micro, small, and medium sector enterprises, there has been a survey done by Advocata Institute, and this is what they have found. And as you have correctly mentioned, the number one barrier, difficulty in accessing finance or getting capital. 53% of the respondents have said that. And you can see there are other reasons. There's a list of reasons. I don't want to take your time in going through one by one. This access to finance part, I'm getting back in a while because it has two aspects broadly. One is non-availability of sufficient sources of finance at an affordable level. Secondly, even when they have the sources of finance, like the formal banking system, there are other barriers why they cannot obtain funding facilities because of various other challenges they have to face during the process. Okay, let me move. Now, when you look at an SME sector organization, it doesn't get affected at once. They get affected in a cycle, I would say, in stages due to various impacts that are taking place in the marketplace. So we call it the 4-phase recovery cycle. When we want to get a SME out of this, we need to first look at these cycles, how they have got affected. The first one is the shutdown impacts. So some of these SME sector entities are impacted due to shutdown, curfew, so you are unable to operate. So this is mainly visible in areas like tourism, travel, wholesale and retail business, hospitality, entertainment. We can see that because most of these industries, you can't have doorstep delivery, because these are services mostly. So these kind of entities are affected directly due to the lockdown or shutdown of business. Then we have the second cycle, that is supply chain disruption. Due to the disruption of the supply chain, most of the large players who manufacture products have downscaled their operations or stopped their operations. And in these large manufacturers, you can find many SME sector suppliers who are the suppliers to these manufacturers. So as a result of the supply chain disruption, most of the SME sector people could not supply to these players, and as a result, their demand got declined and they were affected. Thirdly, we have demand depression situation, that is mainly from the market side, the households stop spending or reduce spending on certain goods and services, especially discretionary items and luxury items. As a result of that decline, there is a demand decline in the overall market. As a result, the SMEs who are supporting those markets face issues. Then the recovery, we cannot 100% put that equation into the company or the business, because however much you plan out, however much you build your strategy for recovery, that is entirely dependent on how the external world behaves, especially the health situation, how far the health situation is going to be better, and the timing of that is also a consideration on top of everything when we look at the recovery phase of a business. Right. When you look at this recovery, I'll talk about some priorities that you need to have. What are your current priorities and long-term priorities? I will discuss that in a little while. Before that, let me also talk about how different businesses are affected throughout their life cycle. Right? Whenever you are looking at this recovery, you have to also look at the life cycle of the business. Where are you in the whole cycle? Because at each stage of your life cycle, your pain points can be different. So I've extracted this from one of the articles of McKinsey. So they talk about the launch phase, that's the initial phase, business as usual phase, growth phase, and expansion phase. You have to see what stage are you going through in your business, whatever the business. And then your problems can be different depending on where you are. Of course, if you are in the expansion phase, you might not want to worry too much about it because you can sustain with current business if you have sizable business that can be managed in the current context. But if you are in the expansion phase, it's just that you have to postpone your expansion. That is all you need to worry. But other than that, you don't have to worry. So the most affected businesses are the ones at the launch phase, initial stages. And there were certain research findings in the recent past on these impacts. And they have said around 1/5 of the SME businesses that were in the initial phase had the risk of complete shutdown. And also in that, around 26 to 30% were youth-led businesses. With these youth, they are starting new businesses. And most of these businesses at their startup stage, initial infant stage, those businesses got affected heavily. And mind you, most of these businesses are highly promising tech startups. And then when they get disrupted, it can have an impact on the overall startup ecosystem as well. So I will not take one by one. I just wanted to show you that perspective. When you evaluate a business from recovery point of view, you need to look at their pain points at different stages and where they are. And depending on that, you need to address it. Let me come to what we really mean by SME ecosystem. which we think is lacking in our case. I'll explain you the reasons one by one later. When you say an ecosystem, that is about the whole infrastructure and tools and components that are available for an SME to launch their business, grow their business, and sustain in the long run. So throughout the life cycle of an SME, there has to be sufficient support, assistance, and hand-holding at times to ensure that the business is launched effectively and smoothly run. So what I'm going to show you now are some of the key elements as I think should be part of this ecosystem. There can be many other elements that you can attach to this because there's no universally accepted model as such. It depends on how you believe the process should be and what are the elements that are required to support the SME player. One area is funding and financing, finance aspect, right? Funding, it can be equity, it can be debt financing. So there has to be sufficient platforms, sources, avenues for SMEs to source their funding. The second area is the human capital. When I say human capital, it involves both the low-level blue-collar laborers, especially manufacturing-oriented organizations, and then the white-collar talent as well, depending on how much you want. One of the features we find in this SME sector organizations, most of these businesses are run by family owners, right? Family and the owners, and they are the members of this business. And then we have this issue whether they are the right people to run this business, whether they have those competencies, etc. And that's why we need education and training, because one of the main areas we need to look at when we talk about growing SMEs or local industries is their knowledge level to run a business, identify different dynamics of the business, how to read market, and more importantly, how to assess the performance of the business. Most of these SME sector players do not know how to read their financials. And more than anything, there has been a survey. They have identified more than 30 to 40% of the enterprises they have surveyed did not have any form of accounting. And even recently, I'm getting a lot of clients of that nature. Even the day before yesterday, I got a client who has 4 businesses under his wing. Those are all successful businesses. And there's one business that is got disrupted due to this. That's why he wanted my support. When I looked at the business, I realized that he's running the business without any accounting records. And these are some of the problems we have in this segment, right? So the education and training is a must. Then markets, another big challenge in this SME segment is not having a proper market for them. When I say market, it is not about existence of markets. There are enough markets in existence. But the problem with these guys is they are unable to access those markets due to various reasons. Say, for example, sometimes these players are too small that they cannot supply sufficient quantity to the market. Therefore, they are thrown away from the market. The big players are capturing those markets. The second issue would be they don't know how to get into certain market spaces because sometimes the manufacturing can happen in a distance village and they need to supply this to maybe PETA or some other area for selling purpose. And they don't have that capability, understanding, and links to get into those markets. And they don't have the network to identify buyers. And they don't have the knowledge and capacity to do the high-end branding, marketing exercises that other companies, big companies would do. So therefore, there has to be a mechanism to facilitate market for them. We do have different mechanisms available in the Sri Lankan context, especially if you take places like Laksala, run by government. There are places of that nature people can join, but that is not adequate to penetrate all the industry segment. That is where the problem is. And then the policy and regulation. This is where the government comes into the picture. And after this, I will show you, based on my own observation, the areas that I think the government needs to work on, and there are big misses on that side. The policy and regulation. There are a lot of disconnects in the policy framework. There are misfits in certain regulations that hinders SME sector players performing. Then advisory and mentoring. We need high quality advisory, because what we see is that we don't get high quality advisory services going into this segment. We have big firms, consulting firms, consultants, agencies, but most of these players cannot afford them. And as a result, most of the people who advise them are also not having sufficient capacity and competence to support these people. And there is a big demand in this segment for high quality advisory and mentoring support. And then we also need technology. This is one of the biggest areas that these people are lacking in today's context. To tell you, a very small thing like a Facebook page, a Facebook campaign, most of these people don't know how to do that. These are somewhat affordable, effective methods in today's context. And they don't know how to use their mobile phone to penetrate this market and do a lot of things. There are a lot of things that they can get if you use the technology properly, and this can even go to a larger scale of automating some of their processes as well. So connecting to this, you can expand these segments into various other components, but in a nutshell, this is what I feel a complete ecosystem. This needs to cover at least from all the angles for SMEs to survive. Now see, this is what I have observed in the Sri Lankan context. I will go a little faster just to give you a flavor of what I have seen in the national level misses. But at the same time, I must say the government is taking steps to fill most of these gaps. Number one, we do not have a national SME policy framework for the country. Right? We have several ministries and ministers and departments working on this. We do not have, and I'm glad that now there is an initiative by the Industrial Development Board under the respective ministry. And I'm also participating in that to provide various inputs. It's a good news, but I hope that this will be in place very soon, because this is the fundamental infrastructure that we need in the country to run the rest of it. Then the availability of a single dedicated agency to formulate and coordinate overall policies and strategies for SMEs. Even in the current government, we have several ministries working for different segments, but we do not see a single entity, an umbrella entity or agency that is taking care of all of them and running as a single unit. That is a necessity in my view, but I have seen that proposal in the manifesto of the president, and I believe that he will take steps to set up that single window unit very soon. The non-availability of a national database. We don't have a national database. We don't know who the SMEs, who the players, and I have approached several government agencies. None of these agencies have a comprehensive database of the players in each segment. So we have bits and pieces. This is another big miss at the national level. Non-availability of a single window for government services. Another big miss. This is one of the barriers for SMEs to set up their businesses. They have to go from one place to another, and most of the people stop the process in the middle and give up because of this hassle because they don't have a single window to get all these government services from one place. Then non-existence of a credit guarantee institution or a mechanism. This is another area that we need to look into. As we all know, one of the problems that the SME sector is facing, they don't have proper collaterals for most of these players when they want to obtain a loan facility. And the banks are also not willing to give without any comfort. Only in limited instances, they provide facilities without a collateral. That is where the credit guarantee institution needs to come in between. I'm glad that there has been a proposal there is a SME task force, CMA, SME task force, where I'm also a member. We have drafted a policy with the experts and submitted to the government. And I'm glad that it has gone through several stages under the leadership of Professor Lakshman Watawala. And we are expecting that to be a reality very soon. If that happens, this is going to be a very good support for SME sector players to have this credit guarantee institution to support their financing needs. The non-availability of a common definition for SMEs. Another problem, if you go to different institutions have different definition of SME. When you go to Industrial Development Board for something, they have a definition for it. When you go to another institution, they have a different definition. When you go to a bank for financing purpose, they have a different definition. So we don't have a common definition of SME even. So then again, a problem which we need to address. Then non-availability of SME rating agencies or credit bureaus. This is again another big miss that we have, because we don't have a CRIP for SMEs. We have a CRIP for big players. Then banks are reluctant to lend without having proper background check. So if we can have some kind of an agency or an institution that will evaluate these people, maintain a database and give some comfort to these institutions, that is going to be a major support for these guys to thrive. Right. The other one is non-availability of low-cost collateral-free lending institutions. We have banks, we have institutions, but we have only identified schemes at a very smaller scale, but we do not have low-cost collateral-free project lending institutions or loan schemes sufficiently to cater to the demands of the SME sector. And we also don't have adequate equity financing options in Sri Lankan context for these people to find equity partners, because most of these players do not want to go for borrowing all the time, and they don't have capacity also. There needs to be a mechanism for them to get this equity financing, which is not available at a sufficient level in the Sri Lankan context. These are just few high-level things as I can observe. There are many other factors we can consider, but if you want to strengthen this ecosystem of SMEs or local industries, these are top priorities at the national level, I would say someone has to pay attention to. Then I talked about the barriers for bank funding, right? Now you can see this is not Sri Lanka. This is a survey done by IFC in MENA region, but findings are more or less similar to the Sri Lankan context. That's why I have taken this slide here. You can see the number one criteria, right? The barrier is lack of appropriate collateral. So this is where most of the SME players are finding it difficult, and that compels them to go for high cost informal financing options, and they get caught with this local microfinance companies and other polymudalali type of people, and then they get caught with this debt trap. Mind you, the average cost of financing in this segment due to this informal segment coming into the picture is around 25%. Can you imagine a business that will have average 25% cost of finance to run a business to generate a return on investment above 25%? It's almost an impossible situation for most of these people. And that is where they get into debt trap. And there are other reasons I don't want to explain here. I just want to show you. And if bankers are watching this, any of you are working for a bank, sorry. I just added this slide just to show if any bank is willing to look at this SME sector. This slide gives you an overall business model you need to have to support this SME financing. I extracted this from IFC. They have done a presentation on developing the SME sector banking model, and this model clearly identifies all these segments which will be helpful for SME banking model if anyone is interested in working on that. Right. Then we want to move ahead with this crisis. When we want to move ahead, you have immediate tasks and long-term tasks. So your immediate attention should be, if you are an SME player or a professional supporting an SME sector organization. And I would say this model is even applicable for large organizations as well, right? Your immediate attention or first and focus should be on employee protection, stakeholder management, supply chain, and the cash flow. So these would be your immediate priorities to get out of this crisis. And then you need to look at the future focus. While you pay attention to these immediate things, you move into the long-term future focus. That is why you need to do scenario planning, because we never know what will happen next, right? We cannot now have long-term planning models. We need to keep on revising our models. We need to be prepared for several scenarios depending on what may come across. And you need to build resilience. That is basically in terms of your business model, your human capital, your technology and resources. You should be able to bounce back when a shock hits your business. You need to build that competency capacity in your organization. And then you need to have a revival agenda, because immediate response would be to come out of this crisis, and then gradual revival agenda you need to plan out, which might also require to revisit your entire business model. And then reimagination and reform for the new normal. Now, as we are discussing, new normal is not a world without pandemic. We have to now imagine the new normal with pandemic. So we will have to now redefine most of our policies, procedures, and the way of doing business. And in that, you may have to balance between cost and risk. Because the reason why I bring in this cost and risk element is, let me go back to what happened to most of the businesses when China was hit first with the pandemic. When China was hit first, we were not affected, but most of our businesses were affected because we were depending on China for our supplies. And that is where some of our businesses have not thought of. They had a single supplier coming from China. When China is affected, our entire production flow got affected, because we went to China because of the cost factor. We also could have gone to India, but India was expensive. Now it's time for you to think between cost and risk. It's okay to go to low cost, but at the same time have a contingency site to cover the risk. That will be a little expensive. Now, these are some of the lessons we have learned and need to capitalize for future. Right, that brings to the polling question number 4. Let's see what it is. What do you think? What is your perception on investing in SMEs in Sri Lanka? Again, we are testing your perception and readiness. Okay, interesting. The highest rating is interested but less opportunities available, which I disagree anyway. Need to wait long time for better return. Again, I tend to disagree. Too risky, that I do want to challenge, because that's your perception about risk. Not interested. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Let me go through the presentation and talk a little bit about this. You might find some answers to this as well. Right, here I have drafted 10 points to embrace new normal for businesses. I'll quickly go through. The reason why I put this list is we're talking about how professionals can support these businesses. So when you see this list, you might find, and there was this answer, no enough opportunities was the highest rating. Now, when I go through several slides hereafter, you will realize there are enough opportunities if you really want to get into this. Right. Adapt business processes and restructuring operations. Now, this is one of the areas that the organization need to do, and this is where one of you can add value. Optimize cash management and identify efficiency gains. Reorient activities and resources to ensure business continuity during lockdowns. You need to also now prepare. What if we face a lockdown hereafter? You have to expect a lockdown every other month hereafter. Although it might not be a reality, you have to plan for it. So that how do I run my business during a lockdown? You need to plan, and businesses can't do that. You all can support them. Foster relationships by improving communications with partners and employees. Build business models that foster resilience, inclusiveness, and sustainability, which I'll explain a little bit later. Build technological competencies to ride the digital wave, which is a big miss in most of this SME sector people. Ensure flow of trusted information and facilitate timely decisions. Again, another big miss. Most of these SME sector organizations don't have proper management information to make decisions. Strengthen the risk management and build immunity to navigate through crisis situation. Risk management is another big miss, not only in small businesses. I have seen this in big businesses as well, especially large family businesses. Use digital platforms to enhance the competitiveness and reaching customers. How you can reach out to customers with digital platforms. Finally, collaborate with complementing stakeholders, chambers, and enablers of business. So most of these SME sector players do not engage with these chambers and various institutions who are making impact or who are raising voices for them, because you are too small to make an impact and influence a big player or the government. It's a good opportunity and strength for you to align with these people and collaborate with other complementing businesses or institutions to support your business. Right, here comes the accountants. This I found from ICAW survey. They say accountants are perceived as the most trusted advisor, with almost 60% of SME responding accordingly. They have done a survey, 60% of the SMEs responded saying accountants are the best advisors for them. In comparison to business networks and consultants, lawyers, and bankers, you can see their ratings. So they see still accountants as the best consultants for their business. Here is a good reason for you to engage in this business. For that, you need to be a trusted advisor. You should be the trusted advisor to these SME players. So what are they looking from you? They expect up-to-date, accurate financial information from you, updates about government initiatives, what is going around, various relief packages. They expect you to know all this and support them, help them get through the crisis and avoid shutting down. They look at your support to survive, to be reassured about the future. So they can't see the future. They expect you to give them some comfort about what would be the future. Guidance on how to best help their customers and stakeholders, deal with banks, regulators, and other stakeholders, and more importantly, communicate, communicate, communicate. Because this is one of the areas that our profession is very weak, communication. When I say communication, it is not only throwing the accounts to your business owners or board of directors or anyone. It's about how you provide your insights to them. This is where we need to be good at storytelling. how to convince a non-finance person about your technical finding or logic. We are very weak in this. This is something that we need to improve. Then I also added a slide about the role of professional organizations, various institutions, including our own institute, in supporting this endeavor. Number one, you have to advise government and policymaking agencies as professional organizations. They need to intervene the policymaking process and support their thought process to get the best out of these policies. Then involve in issuing guidelines for SMPs, that is small and medium-sized practitioners, to offer a broader array of advice to SMEs, because these are the closest people to SMEs. These institutions need to support these SMPs to do that job better. Then commission research to identify the critical needs of SMEs. Right? You can do research. Develop educational programs for competency development. Develop toolkits addressing the delivery of new services. Because as I told you, small practitioners don't have the capacity to invest on these things. So institutions must do some kind of developments, this high-end work for them to do the execution. Conduct campaigns to promote the roles of the accountant and to build institutional trust in the profession. That's again important. How we build confidence among the membership, among chartered accountants and other members at different levels that the institute is producing. It's the institution's responsibility to build that confidence through various campaigns and initiatives. Partner with other organizations, business associations, and agencies to develop joint programs that serve the interest of the SMEs as well as SMPs, I must say. Now, I must tell you, at this point in time, I am glad that I am also a member of this committee. The Chartered Institute has established an SME committee to look into all these aspects. And this committee has started its work. Very soon you will get notifications about the objectives, different tasks this committee is doing. And more importantly, this committee has set up a mentoring mechanism where you all can be the mentors for these SME sector players. And the institute will very soon send out a communication seeking your support and expecting you to join this endeavor. This committee has several subcommittees. Each committee is looking after a different area. Almost everything in this list are addressed through this committee. As a national accounting body, the institute has taken this initiative, and we would like all of you to give your fullest cooperation in whatever the possible way to make this a success. Then the polling question number 5. Right. I am ready to invest in SMEs in Sri Lanka if it comes through a proper reputed channel which I can trust, 41%. I have an administrative control access over that business. I get minimum guaranteed return, 24%. I get an ownership. Okay, so typical chartered accounting way of looking at it, we always want a guaranteed return. That's also interesting, but I must also tell you when you get into this entrepreneurship business, you need to be able to bite a little bit of risk as well, right? There'll be a higher return depending on the risk you take. So if you always go for guaranteed return, probably getting into entrepreneurship or business may not be the option. Then you better put your money in a bank account or have some stability, because remember, we are talking about a segment that is highly vulnerable. They are taking a risk. So how far we want to get involved with them also tells a little bit about our risk appetite as well. Nevertheless, this is what you have to say. And I agree with the 41%. If you can have some channels confidently, yes. And I can not, this presentation I have not included. There are several channels. You can confidently route your requirement and get engaged. Maybe if there are interested parties, I may be able to discuss through your chapter offline after this presentation. Okay. So final slide, I think, possible areas for professionals. Now this list I have crafted for you to see if anyone is thinking what exactly I can do for this SME segment at my level as a professional. This is an area you can consider. This will support you there. This list is not a comprehensive list, but I just have compiled a list of things off the head so that you can think of the areas where you can contribute. Global knowledge and best practice sharing. You can bring in best practices with these SMEs. SME specific diagnostic methodologies. That is basically you go and do a diagnostic study of your SME players and explain them where they are lacking with your expertise, and they will fix them. Local market knowledge and research support you can give. MIS and data analytics support. Value proposition and business model design. Tools to identify capability gaps. You can also do a capacity evaluation, knowledge gaps. Product advisory specific to SMEs. Customer value proposition. You can be the supplier or the advisor to design that. Opportunity seizing tools and solutions. There are enough tools and solutions used by large organizations, but small players don't have access or they cannot afford. You can be the provider of that. You can invest or you can partner with a party who can provide it, and you can support the SMEs to use those services. Market research, strategy development, customer management, delivery channels, accounting and business process outsourcing, process automation, capacity building and grooming, market access and platforms. Another area is you can be the investor. You can create platforms that are missing in the market now. You can create, we have Alibabas, you have Darasas, there are different platforms. So you also can be the inventor of such marketplace for them to come and sell their product, right? Business referral models and network building. This is very efficient in the medium and large scale business world, not at this SME segment. So you can think of a model to cater to this segment. Equity financing and funding solution. You can be the broker in between finding the investor, or you yourself can invest in some of these businesses, right? So at my level, all these things are available. If any one of you are interested in supporting any business through any of these channels, we have the mechanism available. We can explain you how it works. You can be part of it. You can operate in two modes. One is if you want to support this segment as a CSR, there are channels on a voluntary basis you can support in various ways. Or if you're also looking at a commercial model as an entrepreneur, as an investor, there are enough avenues in all these areas through that channel as well. So maybe we can take up this discussion at a different level if anyone is interested. But I just wanted to highlight at a high level, we as professionals have different capacity, ability, and knowledge, tools, access to various resources that these underprivileged SME players do not have. And we can do a lot to this segment and boost not only them, but the entire economy of this country, because I see this SME sector, even the existing players, there's an enormous amount of potential. Most of these people are working with heavily underutilized resources and under capacity. We can be the catalyst to improvise that capacity and go to market. I have found many SME players who have very good established market. The only thing missing in those people is they do not have the bandwidth to expand their business. They don't have the capital to support their production scaling up. But the market is stable, enormous. So if you all are interested, you can see there are enough space and potential. And I invite all of you to take part in this worthy cause to build our country in the end, in whatever the capacity you think you want to. And I, as a person, and we as an institution, and also as a members of professions, we will extend our fullest cooperation. And thank you very much for your patient hearing. And now I think it's time for us to look at some of the questions. Looking forward to respond to those as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charminder, for your interesting session. It was very detailed and practical. Your extensive experience in the area of today's topic was clearly visible in the information you delivered to the audience. You went to the depth and detailed. It was very detailed. Now we can move on to the Q&A session. Looks like our audience is very keen of the topic today. We have received a couple of questions already. So I'll start with the first question. I believe import restrictions would have impacted SME sector in our country. What would be the best policy for our country with regard to the imports in long run?
Right. Now it's like this. We have to accept that we are a import dependent country. By the time the pandemic hit us, our import bill was double the export bill. So you can imagine the size we are talking about, right? When we export 100, we import 200. If I put numbers, it's around $11 billion was our export, around 22 billion was our import. So by putting a restriction, you cannot fix it all of a sudden. So it also has affected a lot of industries because we do not have sufficient capacity here. So my suggestion is we cannot eternally control the import, but what we can do is we need to build capacity within the country to cater to that requirement. So if we have stopped this, I would say there are two types of imports. One, we have the capacity, strength, and resources to build or manufacture those stuff in the country. And I think for those industries, the government need to have some kind of a protectionism mechanism and at least to have certain restricted market space for local industries, however much cheaper you can bring the import items. Other items that we don't have capacity or the competitive advantage, we may have to continue importing. But at the same time, we must at a national level correct our equation. Our export bill should always be above the import bill, which is up the other way around at the moment. And I must say it's not a short term. In the long term, that should be the equation we are looking at. And for that, we need to strengthen the local industries for sure. And I will give you another number. We talk about entrepreneurship. In our country, we have less than 3% entrepreneurs in the population, right? So we need to improve this. My target is at least if we can improve this entrepreneurship as a percentage of population, at least to 5 to 10% within the next 5 years, then we are in a good footing.
As expats living outside of Sri Lanka, what are the avenues available to embark in SMEs and how can we materialize as expats?
Yeah, I think I have answered that question with my last slide, right? If you look at the list of the items in that last slide, all these avenues are available. There are certain things you can even deliver remotely wherever you are. It's just that you need to find a mechanism to reach out to the SME player. And for that also, we have different platforms. If anyone is interested, I can provide that. But now it's not the time for me to explain everything. Depending on your requirement, you can get those channels, whatever the channel you think is relevant for you. And as I told you earlier, as CA Sri Lanka, we have also established this SME committee. There we do, it's a kind of a CSR activity we do. If anyone is interested in supporting through that channel, that is also available. And that channel might also open up various avenues for you to then commercialize later. That is also there. But apart from that, depending on where you want to invest, what aspect you want to get involved, there are enough channels in all the areas that I have mentioned. That's the short answer I can give.
How attractive if we start a business for accounting, tax and other advisory services? Is there untapped market of accounting advisors or else it is oversupplied at the moment?
I wouldn't say oversupply, but we have large number of SMPs around the country. I think the gap, I personally see, this is my personal view, the gap is not the number. The gap is whether we are delivering what they want. Say, for example, as a SME sector player or a customer, you can't go to them and say, I am an expert in finance, I am an expert in tax, I am an expert in sales, I am an expert in IT. They don't know this, they don't want those. They have a very simple basic requirement. Their requirement is they want to grow their business, or they have a problem in the business, someone need to fix. And if you can see my tagline behind this, my consulting firm tagline, our business is growing your business, because I'm catering mostly to SME sector. So I can't go and say I'm an accountant or this and that. So that sometimes is the missing piece from our end. When you go and talk to the SME players, we as a practitioner or a professional should have that overall all-round. You should be an all-rounder. You need to have an overall understanding and should be able to cater to their overall need. Inside that, there can be different pieces. And this is a big miss in the current context. Most of the firms that we are seeing across the country, they have very specific products. We sell products, not solutions. We say we give you tax service, we give you accounting service, we give you audit service. These are just products. But there is a big space if anyone wants to penetrate with the solution mindset, right? As an all-rounder, there is space. I won't say it's overflowed. Still, there is a space in terms of expectation gap, right? What they expect versus what we give, there's a gap.
Due to the struggle in SMEs, will there be any risk on financial market, such as banks and financial companies?
I would say it is yes and no to a certain extent. For example, this is how it can affect. If you look at SMEs as customers, there are few banks who are heavily dependent on these SMEs. So those financial institutions, yes, will get affected. But the larger banks, they might not directly affect, but they will get indirectly affected because, as I told you, our economy, over 60 to 70% of our economy is run by SME. Right? So when the SME struggle, economy struggle. When the economy struggle, the entire market is collapsing. So that will have a cascading effect on not only financial institution, all the segments. That's why I always say, even the government need to pay enough attention to this segment. You can't look at a small player and say he's small, but we have large number of small players who are contributing to this national economy. You need to look at the holistic impact. So the answer, that's why the answer is yes, there is an impact in an overall sense, but directly, not many banks will get affected depending on their portfolio.
One of the other issue to SMEs is non-consistent tax policy. Has this been noted by the authorities, and can we expect that the tax policy for SMEs will be simplified and consistent in the future?
Yes, it's again, it has several aspects. If you look at the current tax system, there are enough concessions already given to these people, right? So let's say SME, you can be a sole proprietorship also, right? You don't need to be a company per se. If you are a sole proprietor, you have a big space for you to earn. So your tax threshold start at 3 million, right? So 250 per month. It's a big amount, right? Now, the other side is this consistency part. Of course, there are certain gaps here and there, but I must say, as far as taxes are concerned, the government has already given a lot of concession during latter part of last year and early this year. Lot of the burdens that were there, even NBT, ESC, all abolished now, right? Even the VAT threshold has been increased. I think the government has given enough space for SMEs and small players in terms of taxes. This other issue is that most of the people are afraid of coming into the formal segment or registering their business and opening up a tax file because they have a fear of these regulators and tax authorities, etc. But I think it's another role that professionals have to play, as we have to play, convincing these people why they should be inside the network, why they should be in the formal system, and how it is helping them. I think there are more pluses. There are more pluses in getting into this formal system when you run a business rather than escaping. So I must say, even there are a few other gaps. Of course, even we have given a submission to the government about some of these tax concessions, and more than the tax, there are other constraints in terms of labor laws for SME people, because our labor laws are very tough. And we have even given a recommendation to the authorities to see how far they can relax these labor laws for SME players and give them some relaxation to deal with the employees and have some flexibility for them to manage their employees rather than having rigid rules at the beginning.
Recently, we saw very lucrative investments opportunities in cultivation for vanilla. But in the non-history, the investment in agriculture opportunities like these were nothing but failures because of frauds. Is there any action taken by authorities to build up the investor confidence in agriculture investments?
From what I know, the government has given a lot of concessions and policy relaxation for agricultural sector, because there is a big move to come back to these agri-based industries. Especially, there is a big support for value addition. It's not because even if you look at, we are one of the largest tea exporters, and the tea industry is one of the oldest industries that we have in this country. But still, the majority of tea we export are bulk tea, right? So likewise, we have a lot of crops that we export without adding enough value. Even for that matter, you take even cinnamon and all these spices, only very few organizations have scaled up to add value and get the value to the country. So what happens is, most of our agricultural product, we are the cultivator, but bulk of the value of this product is extracted by someone elsewhere. They buy bulk and they do the value addition and get the money there. I think we can transform that money into the country if we can increase the value here, and the government is supporting in big way for that. I'm hopeful of lot of incentives and further amenities to come in the upcoming budget for those areas. And I'm afraid I do not know specifically about this vanilla matter, but I'm talking about in general. I'm sure that even this matter must have been tackled in some form.
For an SME, the most tough part is convincing the investors to invest in them. So, what is the role of an SME in earning the credibility of the investors?
Now, the problem is this. As I told you, these people are very raw people. Most of these SME people, they have some skill maybe, right? They have some resources. They have some talent in some form, which they have converted into a business. But they don't have this governance, professionalism, all these other cosmetic aspect of it to, convince or sell their business case to another. That is where we as professionals need to come in between. So we can go and build their business model and the governance structure and do this, what you call icing, to make that business lucrative, to make that business much more robust and governance oriented, because most of the investors, they want to see an established business model. They want to see the financials. They want to see proper information flow. And those are the things that an investor want to see at a minimum when they want to invest. They want to see what's happening. And they also would like to see some kind of a professionalism around in the business. And that is the ecosystem or the governance model that we are building. So if we intervene and support these SME players to build that, that will be seen as a positive thing by these investors, and they will come. And there are a lot of uncut diamonds in this segment. Unfortunately, they themselves don't know their potential. They are operating in a very small scale because they are just fine the way they are. Sometimes they don't even know their value. This is where we can intervene. But one thing I have to say, if we as professionals want to intervene into this segment, you should be prepared to roll up your sleeves and go to the mud, right? You can't be egoistic. You can't be, posh. You can't do that. And you also have to be genuine and you have to be authentic, right? You, with that interest, if you can go into this place, there are enough space that we can build this. And the answer to your question in simple terms, these people may not have that skill. It's our duty to intervene and support them to build that confidence.
With that, we have answered all the questions that have been referred to us. Thank you very much again, Mr. Charminder, for an interesting and interactive session. With that, I will hand over.
And there was a message for me about my contact. Let me also show that if anyone is interested. Right. So some people were asking for my contact. This is my contact. If anyone wants to contact me.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Ravinder. With that, I'll hand over the session to our General Secretary, Tisra Dilshan, for the final remarks.
Thank you, Dishani. Very good afternoon to everyone. First and foremost, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Charminder Kumarasiri for this wonderful presentation with great insights on the role of professionals in enabling the ecosystem of SMEs in Sri Lanka. And we were fortunate to engage an eminent resource person like you, who has not only researched on the subject matter, but also practically contributing in various ways to support SMEs in Sri Lanka. Once again, thank you very much, Charminder, for no hesitation shown in accepting our invitation and also providing valuable inputs and the friendly collaboration extended to the Executive Committee in organizing this webinar. We wish you success in all your future endeavors. Of course, No events can become successful without the participation. On behalf of the Executive Committee, I take this opportunity to extend our most sincere thanks to all CA member and non-CA member participants from Kuwait, Sri Lanka, GCC countries, and around the world. We believe that the webinar was very informative and beneficial for all of you, and your enthusiastic participation made this event a success. Last but not least, big thanks to the Executive Committee for wonderful selection of the topic and organizing this webinar. So with that, now it's time for us to wrap up this webinar. Just before that, one more humble request from all of you. Just click on the link that is shared in the chat box and spend a couple of minutes to provide your valuable feedback on the webinar. We really believe that your genuine feedback will help us to further improve in our events. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Goodbye.